What?
I didn't ruin you, Rachel. I just kept the receipts. Which?
So there I was, on a Tuesday morning around 9:45, standing in my own hallway like some kind of ghost, clutching a coffee mug that had suddenly become my only reliable relationship. The thing about betrayal is, it doesn't always come with dramatic music and rain-soaked confrontations. Sometimes it sneaks up on you wearing yoga pants and talking way too loudly on speakerphone. My wife Rachel was standing in our living room, having what I can only describe as the most casual marriage assassination I've ever witnessed. "Mom, I'm telling you, I'm done with him," she said the same way someone might say they're done with a boring Netflix series. "I can't live with a man who thinks sleeping with my boss is such a big deal. Like seriously, it's not the Victorian era." Misunderstand, coffee mug halfway to my mouth, brain hitting error messages. Sleeping with her boss, her wealthy boss. When did this become public knowledge? And when did infidelity get rebranded as a lifestyle choice? The voice on the other end belonged to Patricia, Rachel's mother, and the human embodiment of a migraine. Patricia believed marriage was a temporary economic arrangement, like a timeshare you could upgrade when something better came along. She'd been divorced 3 times, each husband progressively wealthier, and wore her alimony payments like war medals. "Oh, darling, finally," Patricia's voice crackled through the speaker. "I've been saying for years you could do so much better. Someone who understands your lifestyle, your ambitions. That poor man still drives a sedan." Misunderstand, I thought bitterly, is fully paid off, gets great mileage, and has never once judged me for eating fast food in parking lots at midnight. More than I can say for present company. Rachel laughed, actually laughed, and I felt something inside me crack. Not break, just crack. Like a windshield that's going to hold for now but will definitely shatter spectacularly later. I know, right? And he's so predictable. He makes eggs the same way every Sunday. The same way, Mom. Who does that? People who aren't sociopaths, I wanted to scream, but I didn't say anything. I just stood there listening to my marriage get canceled like a problematic tweet. "So what's your plan, sweetheart?" Patricia asked, and I could practically hear her lighting a cigarette. Already talking to a lawyer, Gerald Henderson, that divorce attorney who handled the Richardson case. He's supposed to be ruthless. The physical equivalent of a great white shark. "And Marcus?" Patricia asked, using my name like it was a mild inconvenience. Rachel sighed dramatically. "Oh, he'll agree to everything. He's too soft. The man apologizes to furniture when he bumps into it. He's not going to fight me on this." Patriarch? She was absolutely right. I walked back to the kitchen, set my mug down with careful precision, and stared at the wall calendar that still had our anniversary circled in red marker. September 14th, heart drawn around it. Rachel's handwriting from back when she pretended to care about things like anniversaries and monogamy. When she came into the kitchen 20 minutes later, makeup perfect and hair styled like she was filming a commercial, she looked at me with practiced concern. "Marcus, we need to talk." I turned slowly, coffee mug back in hand because apparently it had become my security blanket. "Sure, what's up?" Over the next hour, she laid it all out. The affair had been going on 6 months. His name was Brandon. He was her supervisor at the marketing agency, drove a luxury electric car, owned a downtown condo, and apparently understood her need for growth and excitement. She wanted a divorce. A clean, simple divorce. She'd already talked to Henderson and had papers drawn up. All I needed to do was sign. "I think we can handle this maturely," she said, sliding a folder across our kitchen island. "No fighting, no drama. Just 2 adults moving forward." I looked at the papers, then back at her, and smiled. "Okay." Shirts were blinked. "Okay?" "Restrain. Just do it." I reached for a pen from the drawer and signed where she pointed. I watched confusion flicker across her face, followed by relief, then something that looked like disappointment. Maybe she wanted a fight. Maybe she wanted drama to justify whatever narrative she'd constructed, where she was the sufferer, and I was the boring husband who didn't appreciate her. But I just handed the folder back with the same pleasant expression I used declining credit card offers. "That's it?" she asked, holding the folder like it might explode. "That's it," I confirmed. She stood there another moment, clearly expecting more reaction. But when I just went back to scrolling through my phone, she huffed and walked away, heels clicking against our hardwood floors like a countdown timer. After she left, I sat at that kitchen island for a long time, staring at my coffee mug. It had a stupid motivational quote. "Today is going to be a good day." My sister gave it to me last Christmas as a joke. I laughed. Actually laughed. Because she was right about one thing. The best outcomes don't start with explosions. They start quietly, with a pen, with planning, with the kind of calm that only comes when you realize you've been holding all the cards the entire time and never bothered to look at your hand. Here's what Rachel didn't know. To her, I was Marcus Anderson, operations coordinator at a mid-sized logistics company, pulling in $78,000 a year. Respectable, but not exciting. Comfortable, but not wealthy. The kind of salary that made Patricia wrinkle her nose and say things like, "Well, I suppose that's adequate." What Rachel didn't know, what nobody knew except my accountant, my lawyer, and the IRS, was that Marcus Anderson was basically my Clark Kent disguise. My real identity was M.R. Anderson, founder and CEO of MRA Consulting Group, a boutique firm specializing in supply chain optimization and contract negotiation for major corporations. I'd started the company 7 years ago, a full year before I even met Rachel at that charity event, where she'd been networking, and I'd been enjoying free shrimp cocktail. The company was registered under my initials to keep it separate from my personal life, and all the paperwork, all the assets, all the very considerable income was tied to the LLC, not to me personally. And here's where it gets really good. MRA Consulting handled contract negotiations for Sterling Industries, the massive conglomerate that owned about 17 subsidiary companies. One of those subsidiaries was the marketing agency where Rachel worked, where Brandon was senior vice president, which meant, in the most beautiful twist of irony I'd ever encountered, Brandon was essentially signing off on invoices that paid me. He was approving my contracts. The man sleeping with my wife was unknowingly funding my bank account. Last quarter alone, MRA Consulting cleared $743,000 in revenue. Not bad for a poor man who drives a sedan. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to the weeks after Rachel's casual marriage demolition. See, I'm a numbers guy. Always have been. While other kids were playing outside, I was organizing baseball cards by statistics and calculating probability distributions. In college, I double majored in business and statistics. In my professional life, I'd built an entire consulting company around the principle that every problem could be solved with enough data. So when my wife started having an affair, my brain didn't jump to crying or confrontation. It went straight to, how do we quantify this? What's the pattern? How do we turn infidelity into actionable intelligence? I started tracking everything. I paid attention to her schedule, noting when she said she'd be home versus when she actually arrived. I tracked her car's mileage because, yes, I'm that guy. And on late work nights, she'd put an extra 43 miles on average. Weird, considering her office was only 11 miles from our house. Then I discovered the credit card statements. We had separate accounts, but one joint card for shared expenses. Buried in the statements between the utility bill and grocery charges was a line item. Marriott Downtown, Client Development, $347. Treff attendant at a hotel. Development at a hotel. How professional. I pulled up the full history and found 5 more charges just like it over 3 months, each labeled with business-sounding terminology. It was like watching someone commit fraud with worse creativity. That's when I created the spreadsheet. I called it Infidelity Economics, because if you're going to document your wife's affair, you might as well have fun with file names. I set it up with multiple tabs: timeline, locations, expenses, frequency analysis, and my personal favorite, probability projections. The timeline tab was color-coded by evidence type. Green for suspicious schedule changes, yellow for unusual expenses, red for confirmed hotel visits. By the end of week 2, that spreadsheet looked like a rainbow. I cross-referenced her late meetings with Brandon's social media activity. The guy posted on LinkedIn like he was auditioning for Entrepreneur magazine. Great client dinner tonight. posted at 8:47 on a Tuesday. Rachel's GPS data from our family phone plan showed her at the Marriott downtown. Same time, same night. The frequency analysis tab was my masterpiece. I calculated her average affair frequency per week, 2.3 times, created a bar graph showing peak days, and even developed a predictive model. I was like a meteorologist, except instead of predicting weather, I was predicting infidelity. My buddy Dave called me one evening while I was updating correlation coefficients. Dave worked in IT at Sterling Industries and was one of maybe 3 people who knew I was more than just Marcus from operations. "Dude, what are you doing?" he asked, after I'd been silent for several minutes. "Statistical analysis," I said, adjusting a formula. "Of what?" "My marriage falling apart." Long pause. "Jake, man, that's not normal behavior." I made a spreadsheet calculating the economic impact of my wife's affair, including hotel costs, mileage depreciation, and opportunity cost of her time. I'm aware this isn't normal. I'm leaning into it. "That's either genius or insane." Discharged. Why not both? The thing about turning pain into data is it creates distance. Every betrayal became a data point. Every lie became a variable. It stopped being about emotions and started being about patterns and proof. Meanwhile, I kept playing the devoted husband. I packed her lunches with little notes. I kissed her forehead every morning. I asked about her day with genuine interest. I wasn't being nice. I was being methodical, gathering evidence, documenting everything. Now let me explain the business structure that made this all possible. When I started MRA consulting with my attorney Jennifer 4 years earlier, she'd called it asset protection strategy. I'd called it probably overkill, but sure. "You're doing this for liability protection, right?" she'd asked. "In case the business gets sued?" "Exactly," I'd said, which was technically true. I just hadn't mentioned the liability I was most worried about might someday be named Rachel. The house we lived in? Purchased by the LLC 2 years before our wedding, then rented to us at a very reasonable rate that I paid to myself. The cars? Company vehicles. Investment accounts? Business assets managed through corporate structure. Everything was time-stamped, documented, and more legally solid than a bomb shelter foundation. To Rachel, we owned our house together. We had joint assets, we were building a life. In reality, she was my tenant, driving a company vehicle, living in a company house, while I quietly cleared around $400,000 annually through the business. I'd kept everything separate on purpose. Not because I was planning for divorce, I'm not that pessimistic, but because mixing business and personal life is how people get destroyed. I'd seen too many entrepreneurs lose everything in divorces because they'd put assets in personal names. So when Jennifer and I structured MRA Consulting, we did it right. Corporate veil intact. Separate bank accounts, separate credit cards. Business expenses properly documented. I even paid myself a reasonable salary from the LLC, the $78,000 Rachel knew about, while the bulk of profits stayed in corporate accounts. And here's the beautiful part about MRA Consulting that made this situation go from messy divorce to chef's kiss level irony. My company specialized in supply chain optimization and contract compliance for large corporations. About 3 years ago, Sterling Industries hired us to streamline their subsidiary management processes, including compliance oversight for all their smaller companies, including the marketing agency where Rachel and Brandon worked, which meant every quarter, Brandon had to submit reports that eventually crossed my desk. Not Marcus Anderson's desk, M.R. Anderson's desk, CEO of MRA Consulting. The firm Sterling was paying approximately $180,000 annually. Brandon was literally signing off on invoices that paid me. He probably thought M.R. Anderson was some faceless corporate entity, maybe an older guy with a corner office. He definitely didn't know M.R. Anderson was currently sitting in a spare bedroom wearing sweatpants, eating pizza, and reviewing his compliance reports. The beauty of LLCs is they're designed for privacy. My name didn't appear on most public-facing documents. The registered agent was a legal service in Delaware because, of course it was. The business address was a virtual office downtown. Even the website was deliberately vague, professional but generic, with stock photos of people pointing at whiteboards. I'd kept everything separate intentionally. Not to hide from Rachel specifically, but because I'd learned that protection is better than regret. Fast forward to the company gala. Rachel wanted me to attend, probably to show Brandon how docile and manageable I was. "You don't have to come if you don't want to," she'd said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "No, I'll go," I'd said. "It'll be fun. I like meeting your colleagues." Azramnia, the lie tasted like champagne. The gala was held downtown at an expensive hotel, one of those venues that charges $200 a plate. Rachel had gone full out, designer dress, professional styling. She looked genuinely beautiful, which made the whole situation feel like Greek tragedy. That's when I met Brandon. Brandon Torres looked exactly like someone who would drive a luxury car and sleep with other people's wives. Mid-40s, perfectly styled hair, suit that screamed money. He had that specific confidence that comes from never facing real consequences. "Marcus," he said, extending his hand with an overly firm grip. "Great to finally meet you. Rachel talks about you all the time." "Does she?" I said pleasantly. "That's sweet. She mentions you too. Sounds like you work well together." A flicker of something crossed his face. "We make a good team. She's one of my best people. Really drives results." "I'll bet she drives something," I thought. But what I said was, "That's great. She definitely puts in the hours." "That's what it takes to succeed," Brandon agreed. "You've got to be willing to go the extra mile." "Shameful," I said, raising my wine glass. "To strong partnerships." I looked directly at him. The irony sailed past completely. During dinner, Brandon held court like he was hosting a podcast, telling stories about client meetings with enthusiasm. Every few minutes, his eyes would drift to Rachel, and she'd smile back with that special smile she used to give me when we were dating. Richard Chang, the CFO, sat next to me and seemed genuinely nice. "So Marcus, Rachel mentioned you work in operations. What company?" "Sterling Industries," I said, using my cover story that was technically true. I did work with Sterling. They just didn't know the consulting firm they'd hired was essentially me. "No kidding," Richard said, perking up. "We're owned by Sterling. Small world." "Isn't it, though?" I agreed. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the real show was being prepared. Jennifer had been filing paperwork while Rachel planned her post-divorce life. My lawyer had submitted corporate ownership documents to the court, outlining in excruciating legal detail why every asset Rachel thought she was entitled to belonged to MRA Consulting. She'd attached 7 years of documentation, tax returns, corporate filings, and enough evidence to make even the most skeptical judge understand this wasn't last-minute asset hiding. This was how my life had been structured since before Rachel existed in my world. Then came the Saturday morning that changed everything. I was making coffee when Rachel appeared wearing her serious business outfit. "Marcus, we need a productive discussion about our future." She led me to the dining room, transformed into a corporate boardroom. Our table was set up with legal pads, bottled water, matching pens, and her laptop displaying a PowerPoint presentation. A PowerPoint presentation for our divorce. The title slide read, "Moving Forward, a Proposal for Mutual Growth and Separation." Below that, presented by Rachel Anderson. Relinquid had to physically bite my cheek to keep from laughing. "Please sit," she said like a restaurant host. She'd even set out croissants from the downtown bakery because apparently divorce discussions required continental breakfast. She dimmed the lights slightly and clicked to the first content slide. It featured a Venn diagram showing how our marriage had failed to meet her core emotional requirements. "As you can see," she began, using an actual laser pointer, "our marriage has failed to meet my needs. I've spent considerable time in therapy with Dr. Brennan, understanding my patterns. I've been settling for a relationship that doesn't challenge me intellectually or support my professional growth." Minimized was a comparison chart. Left side, Marcus's priorities: stable employment, paid-off vehicles, home maintenance, predictable routines, safe financial choices. Right side, Rachel's aspirations: professional excellence, strategic networking, luxury lifestyle alignment, dynamic experiences, high growth opportunities. "You see the disconnect?" she said, circling her list with the laser pointer. "You're content with mediocrity, Marcus. I respect that, but I can't live that way anymore." Croissant I'd bitten into suddenly tasted like ash. The final slide showed her proposed asset division with a pie chart. Her slice was noticeably larger, labeled Rachel's portion, 60%, while mine was a sad wedge marked Marcus's portion, 40%. Now I know California is technically 50-50, she said, clicking to a subslide. But given that I've been the primary driver of our social connections and the one maintaining our lifestyle standards, and frankly, the one with higher earning potential moving forward, I believe 60-40 better reflects our respective contributions. She'd actually calculated it. House equity, 60% to Rachel. Joint savings, 60% to Rachel. My retirement account, 50% to Rachel. Vehicles. She keeps the luxury car, I keep the sedan. I think you'll find this more than fair, she concluded, clicking to a slide that said, Questions? Over a stock photo of people shaking hands against a sunset. I sat back, tapping the pen against the legal pad. The silence stretched. That was incredibly thorough, very professional. Shirts she brightened immediately. I wanted us to approach this maturely. Absolutely, I agreed. I pulled the pad toward me, wrote some notes, signed at the bottom, and slid it across. You're right. Growth requires letting go of things that aren't serving you. I stood, grabbed a croissant, and headed toward the kitchen. Wait, Rachel called. That's it? You're agreeing? I turned back. Of course. You clearly know what you want. Who am I to stand in the way of your self-actualization? That would be very mid-level employee with no vision of me. Her confusion was beautiful. She'd prepared for negotiation, maybe even a fight, not immediate agreement. For 3 more weeks, I played my role perfectly. Then came the Wednesday afternoon phone call. Mr. Anderson, this is Gerald Henderson. I represent your wife in your divorce proceedings. His voice had that smooth lawyer confidence, suggesting he was doing me a favor by calling. Oh, hello. Rachel mentioned you. We're linked to schedule a meeting to discuss settlement terms. I believe we can reach an amicable agreement without extensive litigation. Translation: I think you're a pushover, and this will be the easiest paycheck I've made all month. Sure. When works for you? We scheduled for Friday at 2. After hanging up, I immediately called Jennifer. He called, I said. Wants to discuss settlement. Very confident I'm going to roll over. Relinquith laughed. You're enjoying this too much. My wife is cheating with a man who unknowingly signs my paychecks. I've earned this. Friday arrived with perfect weather. I wore my only good suit and drove my allegedly shameful sedan to Henderson's office in the financial district. His building was glass and steel, the kind where even security guards looked wealthy. Henderson's firm occupied prime real estate on the 14th floor. The receptionist smiled professionally, clearly categorizing me as the soon-to-be divorced guy about to get cleaned out. Henderson entered 5 minutes later. Late enough to establish dominance, not late enough to be actually rude. He looked AI-generated. Perfectly styled salt and pepper hair, expensive suit, watch that caught light like it was signaling aircraft. Mr. Anderson, he said with a practiced handshake, thank you for coming. He opened his briefcase with reverence and pulled out mountains of papers. This man had done his homework, or thought he had. He'd probably billed Rachel 6,000 or 7,000 for this preparation, which made what was about to happen even more satisfying. Let me start by saying California is a community property state. All assets acquired during marriage are subject to equal division. Relinquith sense, I nodded like a good student. Your wife has been very reasonable in her requests. She's not asking for alimony. She's simply asking for her fair share of marital assets. He slid a document toward me. Asset division proposal, color-coded and detailed. He'd identified what he thought were our primary assets. The house valued at $680,000, both vehicles, joint savings of $23,000, and my retirement account estimated at $120,000. Under California law, your wife is entitled to half these assets. We're proposing she retain the house. You'd be compensated for your equity. She keeps her vehicle, takes half the savings, receives a portion of your retirement. Very straightforward. Document. Really studied it, taking my time. In reality, I was just savoring the moment before everything exploded. Half of what? I asked finally, voice full of innocent confusion. Henderson blinked. I'm sorry? Half of what assets? You said she's entitled to half. Half of what, exactly? Half of the marital assets I just outlined. The house, vehicles, accounts. Oh, I said, nodding slowly. Then I smiled. See, here's the thing. That's not actually our stuff. The house, cars, investment accounts, none of that is marital property. It's company property. The confidence flickered. I saw it. I'm sorry, what? Company property. MRA Consulting Group. It's a consulting firm. You can look it up. Actually, you should definitely look it up. It'll save time. I watched him pull out his phone and type with the focus of a man beginning to suspect his easy case was becoming significantly less easy. The silence that followed was absolutely delicious. Henderson's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, disbelief, concern, finally landing on something that looked like he'd discovered his entire case was built on quicksand. You own a consulting firm, he said slowly. I do, and the assets are owned by the LLC, established in 2017, 2 full years before Rachel and I married. The house? Company owns it. We rent from the company. The cars? Company vehicles. Investment accounts? Business assets. There's a paper trail for everything. Purchases, titles, registrations, tax returns. All properly documented and filed. Henderson's jaw tightened. I'll need to see documentation. Of course. I reached into my regular messenger bag and pulled out a folder so thick it could double as a doorstop. I slid it across with the satisfaction of someone playing a royal flush. That's 7 years of corporate documentation, I said. Articles of incorporation, asset purchase agreements, title transfers, tax returns, business licenses, and my personal favorite, the lease agreement showing Rachel and I have been renting from MRA Consulting since we married. She signed it herself. Page 43 if you want to skip ahead. Henderson opened the folder and began leafing through with growing horror. I watched him flip pages, his face getting progressively paler. This is extensive, he said finally. I like to be thorough. It's kind of my thing. I'm very boring that way. He looked up, recalculating everything. The easy case had just become complicated. The pushover husband had revealed himself to be something else entirely. I'll need time to review all of this, he said, voice noticeably less confident than when we'd started. Take all the time you need, I said, standing and adjusting my off-the-rack suit. Oh, and Mr. Henderson, make sure you bill Rachel for this meeting and for all the additional hours you're going to spend reviewing those documents. Consider it relationship advice. It'll probably be her last expense with credit access. I walked out feeling like I was floating. My sedan was waiting, reliable and judgment-free as always. Thursday morning, approximately 9:30. I was making coffee when Rachel's phone lit up with Mr. Henderson on the screen. Hang on, I'll get it, she called from upstairs, rushing down and grabbing the phone with her professional smile ready. Mr. Henderson, good morning, she answered brightly. I turned back to the coffee maker, definitely not listening. Yes, I've been... She stopped, her voice changed. I'm sorry, what? The professional smile vanished. What do you mean he owns everything through an LLC? Her voice jumped an octave. He's just a mid-level employee. He works in operations. He drives a sedan. The sedan again. Always the sedan. Henderson's voice was muffled, but I could hear panic. But I signed... What documents? When did I... Oh, God. This was the moment. She was remembering signing the lease agreement when we moved in. The one with MRA Consulting's name at the top that she'd barely glanced at because she was too excited about the nice house. He's the registered owner of our company's consulting firm? Rachel's voice approached hysteria. Every asset I listed belongs to that entity? That can't be. I would have known. I would have... She turned toward me. Our eyes met across the kitchen, and I watched her face cycle through confusion, disbelief, anger, finally landing on something that looked like she was doing complex math and hating the answer. Honey, I said, using my most concerned voice while internally doing an end zone touchdown dance. Your lawyer sounds upset. Everything okay? trespass at me like I just revealed I was secretly an alien. Her mouth opened and closed several times with no sound. She looked like a fish who just realized the nice pond was actually an aquarium. "I'll call you back," she whispered, and hung up without waiting for Henderson's response. The silence stretched. I took a sip of coffee. Perfect temperature. Really nailed the ratio this morning. "What is MRA Consulting?" she finally asked, voice shaking. "It's my company," I said simply. "Consulting firm. Supply chain optimization, contract negotiations, compliance oversight. Pretty boring stuff, really." "Your company? You have a company?" "Had it about 7 years now. Started before we even met. Actually been doing pretty well. It's grown significantly." "And the house?" "Company property. We rent from the LLC. You signed the lease when we moved in. It's filed with the county. Everything's above board." "Unborn." "The cars?" "Undermined. Company vehicles. Tax deductible. Very efficient from an accounting standpoint." "The investment accounts?" "Business assets. Properly documented, filed, reported to the IRS every year. Jennifer, that's my lawyer, you haven't met her. She's very thorough about these things." Rachel's face shifted through colors like a mood ring in full panic. "You lied to me," she said, her voice shaking somewhere between a whisper and a shout. "I didn't lie," I said quietly. "I just didn't tell you everything. You never asked. You thought I was just Marcus from operations, and I didn't correct you." "That's not the same thing. That's still dishonest." "Really?" I asked. "Dishonest like sleeping with your boss for half a year and then trying to take half of what you thought I owned when you filed for divorce? There's a big gap between hiding something and flat-out betrayal." She opened her mouth, shut it, then went pale. "Wait, Brandon. He signs off, oh my God. He approves your invoices?" "Not directly," I said. "They go through layers of approval, but yeah. My reports for Sterling Industries eventually reach his desk. He's a senior VP, so yes, he signs off. Wild coincidence, right?" She laughed, but it wasn't happy. It was the kind of laugh people make when they realize they've been outplayed. "You planned this. All of it." "I planned to protect my money like any smart business owner would," I said. "The rest? That was all you. You cheated, filed for divorce, hired a shark of a lawyer, and made a PowerPoint about taking my stuff. I just had good paperwork." She dropped into a kitchen chair like her legs gave up. "Henderson said I get nothing. The house, the cars, the accounts, they're all separate?" "Technically, yes," I said. "The best kind of correct." She stared at the table. Why didn't I read the lease? Her eyes filled with tears. "How could you do this to me?" Relinquished for the first time, I felt, not pity, that ran out months ago. Maybe disappointment. Maybe sadness that this was how we ended. "How could I?" I said, setting my mug down carefully. "Rachel, I didn't do this to you. I built something. I protected it. I followed the law. You're the one who cheated. You're the one who tried to take what wasn't yours. You're the one who mocked me in a presentation." I started toward the hall, then stopped. For what it's worth, I really did love you. At the start, I thought we were a team. But you saw me as a placeholder, someone you'd leave once something flashier came along. So yeah, I kept my work and personal life separate, not because I planned this, but because I'm not stupid. I left her sitting there, plans in ruins, and went back to my office. My phone buzzed, Jennifer. "Henderson just called. He sounds like he's falling apart. Best Thursday ever." I replied, "Just watched Rachel get the news. Easily top 10 life moments." "Top 10? Not top 5? Let's see how the day goes." I went back to reviewing quarterly reports. Even while your marriage burns down, work doesn't stop. Brandon's compliance papers had just hit my inbox, too. The irony was perfect. If karma had a playlist, the next 2 days would have been all the hits. Henderson called again, sounding like he'd aged a decade overnight. "Mr. Anderson, I need to review your company files. There are some irregularities." Irregularities? I asked. Everything's filed cleanly. Taxes, assets, all documented. Yes, he said with a pained voice. My client didn't realize how much you actually owned. My client, not your wife, already backing away. Well, she never asked, I said. Communication matters in marriage. A week later, everything blew up. Turns out Brandon was married too. His wife, Mrs. Torres, was on the agency's board, and the board really didn't like execs sleeping with subordinates. Brandon got fired. No pursuing new opportunities, just walked out with a box. Rachel lost her job the same day for policy violations. HR didn't even let her pack. Dave texted me, "Dude, Brandon and your wife just got canned. It's all over Slack. People are posting popcorn emojis." I leaned back and smiled. I hadn't done a thing. I didn't tell HR, didn't call Mrs. Torres. I just let the facts do the work. That night, Rachel called, sobbing. "You ruined me, Marcus. I lost everything." "I didn't ruin you," I said. "I just kept records." Then I hung up and slept better than I had in months. 3 months later, I was at a cafe with Jennifer, laughing over lattes. "I still can't believe she made a PowerPoint," Jennifer said, "with pie charts." "Some people think they're the smartest in the room," I said. "Turns out they just don't check the numbers." Rachel had moved back in with her mom, which felt like perfect karma. Brandon had run off to Florida to start over, which is code for hiding. Me? I bought a downtown condo, 32nd floor, great view, technically owned by MRA Consulting. Lesson learned, never mix love and ledgers. "So what's next?" Jennifer asked. "Dating? Revenge consulting?" I laughed. "Probably just work. Maybe a hobby that doesn't involve spreadsheets on infidelity." Then my phone buzzed. An email from Rachel. Subject: "We should talk." 3 paragraphs of regret and second thoughts. Jennifer raised an eyebrow. "You gonna reply?" I moved it to spam and set up a filter to trash future ones. "Nope, I'm good." She lifted her cup. "To smart revenge." Pressured mine. "And tax-friendly karma." Funny thing about revenge, it's not best cold. It's best clean, legal, and properly filed. Being boring and careful turned out to be the smartest move of all. My old Honda's still running, by the way. Great gas mileage. Never lies, never cheats, never quits. Sometimes the plain things last the longest. And sometimes the boring guy in the room, he's just the one patient enough to let everyone else crash first.